Good morning, everybody. It's actually quite fun to see there's so many Hungarian Drupal people, or at least people interested in Drupal. So it's quite surprising, actually. So maybe first, how many of you are actually using Drupal? Okay, so almost everyone. And how many of you consider Drupal to be, or how many of you consider yourselves to be a Drupal developer? Okay, so it's mostly users and then some developers. Cool. So I wasn't quite sure what the audience was going to be like, so I prepared a generic presentation talking about various aspects of Drupal and the Drupal community. So I'll get started. So first of all, who am I? By day, I'm a PhD student at the University of Ghent in Belgium, and my work involves lots of Java stuff and actually no PHP stuff. And then by night, I'm working on Drupal, which is of course PHP. So for me, Drupal is still a hobby. It's not a full-time job, and I'm not making any money with Drupal. So what is Drupal? In one line, Drupal is an open source content management system written in PHP. Of course, that's not very exciting at all. There is at least 100 open source content management systems written in PHP. So the question is then, so what makes Drupal special or different compared to other systems? Or how is it that Drupal is going to change the world? Or if Drupal can make one small change in the world, so then what change should that be? So I think the answers to that questions are sort of captured in this single line. So we're building technology to enable everyone to create multi-user interactive websites. And I'll explain this into more detail throughout my presentation. So first, I would like to focus on the everyone part and talk a little bit more about who is using Drupal and what they are using Drupal for. First of all, communities use Drupal. We, the Drupal community, we use Drupal for our own website. So we're eating our own dog food, but also other open source communities like GNOME, KDE, Mozilla, Debian, Cocoon, and JEdit, they're also using Drupal as part of their total infrastructure. Magazines use Drupal. This is a screenshot of Linux Journal, and they use Drupal to post articles online and to manage their subscriptions. Intranets use Drupal. I went to Yahoo a couple of weeks ago, and every day they publish thousands of websites using Drupal. So they're like heavy Drupal users. And I was actually, when I met the team at Yahoo, I was impressed by their knowledge about Drupal. They actually downloaded all the contributed modules, and they knew fairly well what each of the modules does, and they could even say like, I think I saw this in this module around that line of code. So it's like, to some extent, they knew more about Drupal than me. So universities use Drupal. MIT, Berkeley, and Purdue in the States, but in Belgium there is also all the major Belgian universities have one or more Drupal sites. Broadcast companies use Drupal. VRT is a Belgian broadcast company. They're using Drupal to build some kind of a YouTube clone. MTV, as you might have noticed, MTV UK is using Drupal, and they're using it to build a MySpace clone where people can share music and talk to the MTV people. Rockstars use Drupal. This is a screenshot of the website of Moby, which is I don't know if Moby is well known here, but it's an electronic music guy from New York. Howard Dean uses Drupal, so he uses Drupal for online campaigns. Campaign managers use Drupal to build a network of people and to raise money in this case. NASA uses Drupal, NATO uses Drupal, and actually using Drupal to rebuild part of Afghanistan and to try and make the world a better place. Newspapers use Drupal. This is a screenshot of The Onion, which is a big American newspaper. It's probably one of the biggest Drupal sites out there. So these are just a few examples to show you that Drupal can be used for many different sites, and so everyone can use Drupal, right? And the underlying point is that Drupal is not just a content management system. So it's actually many things at the same time. It can be used to build fairly static websites like brochure sites, but it can also be used to build highly dynamic websites like a discussion website where there's a lot of interaction and many people contributing to the site. So it's not just a CMS, but it's a framework that allows you to extend it in various directions and to build all kinds of websites on top of that. So in short, for users, it's a content management system. So you can download Drupal, install it, and start creating a website. But at the same time, for developers, it's a web application framework. They download Drupal and they can start extending it and build custom web applications with it. Okay, so the other part I wanted to highlight is the we part. So we are building technology. What does that mean? Of course, the we part refers to the Drupal community. So I'll talk a little bit more about the Drupal community. So first of all, we're a friendly community. We're having lots of fun, both at conferences, online, on the mailing list. There is always a lot of joking, and many of us became very close friends. We're also a very passionate community. Like, we make cakes in the shape of a Drupalicon, which I guess shows some passion. We're also a growing community. So on this graph, this is 2001, and on the other hand, it's 2006. And on what you see is the number of posts on the Drupal website. You can see it's been exponential growth. So today we have like 8 million page views a month. We do more than 1 terabyte of traffic a month. And that's just for the forums, essentially, which is like, we probably have one of the most boring sites in terms of graphics and images. Like, we don't have any images on the site, so all of this traffic is just plain text. The Drupal core, and this is only for the Drupal core, it's downloaded more than 50,000 times a month. And there is up to 80,000 registered users on the website. So we're growing, and from the looks, we're gonna continue growing for a while. We also try to educate people. So like this year, already 3 books have been published about Drupal, which is very good and which really helps new people get on board. There's also going to be another book around February, which is going to be a developer book with more technical information. We network. Up to now, we organized more than 5 international Drupal conferences, not including this conference, for example. So there's lots of conferences being organized. And in addition to the more official conferences, there's also lots of local user groups. In total, there is more than 50 Drupal local user groups. Every so many weeks or every so many months, they'll meet, do Drupal presentations to a small group of people and try to spread the Drupal love, I guess. We share. It's actually part of our license. So how many people are familiar with the GPL? I guess most of the people know what it means, right? So the license sort of enforces us to share whatever we do with each other, which is a good thing. We collaborate. There's various ways you can collaborate with the project, and there's lots of people active at several areas. Like there's people doing support, there's people doing documentation, there's lots of people doing translations. There's people maintaining the website, there's developers, team developers, module developers, people on the security and stuff like that. So if you want to be part and become a Drupal contributor, there's lots of different roles to choose from. You can even pick multiple roles if you want to. Another good thing is that we have a growing ecosystem. Like in the early days, which you see on the left-hand side, like every user was also a developer. And over time, this sort of changed, and we had more and more users. And today, we actually have a healthy ecosystem of resellers, hosting companies, system integrators, and so forth, which I think is a very healthy sign and something which is absolutely needed to help Drupal grow and help Drupal get to the next level. Just to give you a rough idea, there is more than 20 Drupal companies doing consulting. Some companies have up to 20 or 25 people working for them, and then there is more than 100 Drupal consultants, and probably even a lot more. So in short, we're a growing, passionate, friendly community. We collaborate, we have a healthy ecosystem, we network, we share, and we educate. So that's pretty much the we part. So the last part of my presentation is going to be, so I explained to you about the everyone and the we. So what are we building and how are we building this? So this is the technology part, so I would like to talk a little bit more about that now. So this is a basic overview of a Drupal system. It uses the LAMP stack. You have some hardware operating system, a database layer which hosts your content, a web server, and then a PHP. And then in blue you see the actual Drupal software, which has a core, and then there's some modules and themes. And the modules and the core together make up for the application layer. They define what Drupal does, and then the themes define how everything looks like. So it's fairly straightforward. And so, for example, I showed you all the different kind of websites you can make. So say, for example, you want to make a company website, then the way it works is you download some modules, and you just enable the modules you need. So in this case, for a company website, you might need the static page module because you want to publish pages. You might also want to use a file upload module because you want to attach PDF documents to your pages, or you want people to be able to download information about your products. And then you might choose to enable the contact module so people can contact you or your company. And maybe you want to turn on the e-commerce module to sell some stuff off your website. Now, on the other hand, maybe you want to create a discussion website rather than a company website. So in this case, you would just enable the forum module, the profile module, and the comment module. So that allows your user to post comments and to post forum topics to your website. And now the cool thing is, if you want to create a company website with a discussion area, you just enable all of the modules. So the way it really works is you download the modules from the Drupal website, you plug and play all the modules, you enable the modules you want to achieve a certain level of functionality. And so today we have more than 300 modules. And on the graph, what you see on the graph is the CVS activity. So it's a number of CVS commits, and as you can see, it also has been growing exponentially. We have more than 500 people with a CVS account. We can make changes to the modules. Some modules are translated, and Drupal core have been translated to more than 50 languages. Okay, so we have all these modules, and some of the things we really try to do is we want to make sure that Drupal is really extensible, but at the same time we want to avoid hacks. And so we put a lot of focus and effort into creating clean APIs. Because we did so, and because we continue to do so, we've been able to create so many modules without hacks. And really is a manifest for the fact that Drupal is modular from the ground up, and even it's even a case that much of the Drupal core uses its own API, so we try to avoid special cases in core, and as a result, Drupal can really be whatever you want it to be, and that's also why so many different websites exist, like I showed you in the first part of the presentation. Security. We try to put a lot of focus on security. We have a dedicated security team. We also try to enforce security through our APIs, like our database API or even our form handling API. They all encourage good security. In addition, we have a security announcement mailing list and an RSS feed with all the latest security issues, and we post our security issues to big security websites like Bugtrack and Syconia. So we try to take security serious. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Drupal architecture now. So one of the fundamental things in Drupal is the notion of a node. So every piece of content in Drupal is a node, and the nodes are managed by the node system. And the way this works is very comparable to the way object-oriented programming works. You have a base type, which would be the node in this case, and all the other content types are derived from the base type. So for example, an article or a review are extensions of nodes, and similarly forum topics, static pages, and stuff like that are also extensions of nodes. And what this buys us is the fact that it provides abstraction. On the one hand, it provides abstraction for data, like all nodes in the system, regardless of their type, they share some common elements like an author, a date, and maybe a unique ID. And on the other hand, it also abstracts common functionality, so not just data, but also functionality. And there's certain operations you want to perform on every piece of content, like for example, you want to publish content, you want to publish reviews, but you also want to publish articles and so forth. Access control and workflow are also examples of common functionality you want to perform on every piece of content. And so this is made easier with the node system, especially because it provides abstraction. So here is a quick screenshot of how you edit a node. I guess many of you know this. And so, for example, the authored by and the authored on fields are fields provided by the node system. And forums, for example, might be a special field provided by the forum module. And searching nodes is, for example, a good example of how we can abstract functionality through the node system. So whenever you implement a new node type, you will automatically be able to search it. And the search system is smart enough to index these nodes. I'm going to skip this slide. So, okay, so the way it works is you have nodes and you derive different types from that, but there is also another way to extend existing content types. So rather than doing it vertically, you can also extend existing node types horizontally, like you can see in the graph. So for example, the file uploads module can choose to file upload enable existing modules. We can do several different node types at once. Trackbacks is another example. The trackback module can add trackback support to any node type it wants to. And similarly, email subscriptions is also a good example of how you can extend existing node types. So the key point of this slide is that there's two ways to extend your system. Either you can implement new node types, or you can extend existing node types. And the combination of both makes for a really powerful system. For example, let's create a conference website. So how it would work is you start from the story node, for example. Then you add the event module, which will extend the stories and sort of event enable them. They'll add like a starting date and an end date. Then with the location module, you download the location module and you enable it, and all of a sudden you're able to location enable your events. So you could, for example, show the venue on a map. So that's another module which extends existing node types. And then you might want to install the sign-up module so people can sign up for your event, and you're able to track how many people is going to be there, and you can send them reminders and stuff. So people can register. And maybe as a last step, you want to enable the e-commerce module, so you can turn your conference into a sellable good. Like you can, people have to pay to attend the conference. So what I'm trying to show here is how different modules can cooperate to build a powerful system. Okay, so in the future, this is a little bit of a look in the future. So the general trend, I think, is that we're adding more end-user programming. So people need to do less coding and more clicking. What I mean by that is currently to create new node types, you have to do programming. And one of the things we've been seeing is that we've been moving to things like custom content types, the Flexi node and the CCK module, for those familiar with that, allows you to define new node types through a user interface by just clicking around a little bit and creating new content. So less programming and more clicking, which is actually very empowering for end user, because all of a sudden you don't have to be a developer, and also there is no disconnect between the people who want to build something and the guy who actually needs to build it. The same is true for custom views and workflows. And so the picture on the right hand side actually tries to resemble the node system. So in my mind, the node system is a big bag of content types, and you define new content types through the custom content types, for example, and then you use views to sort of pull out nodes from the bag and to define different ways at looking at the stuff inside the bag. And I think that's something which we'll be working on more in future. Okay, so here's another example which shows you how you could use the CCK, the custom content types, and also the views. And on this slide, we're going to build Flickr, which is a photo sharing website. So you start with the users module, which is part of Drupal core. Then, for example, you use a CCK and you create a new content type just for uploading images. We can create a very simple content type which just has a title, a description, and an image. Okay, so all of a sudden people are able to upload images and add a description and a title. And then maybe you want to turn on the taxonomy module so people can start tagging photos. You can add free tagging or folksonomies to it. And then with the footnotes modules, you can add overlay notes. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with that, but Flickr allows you to annotate pictures by adding notes to it. That's something we can do with the footnotes module. Next up, you might want to enable the rating module, which allows you or other people to rate your pictures and to give stars to it. So you have rating. You have some sense of rating or interestingness, it's called in Flickr. Maybe you also want to enable the comments module so people can start leaving comments to your pictures. And finally, and this is probably the most interesting step, is you might want to enable the views module to create custom views to extract the nodes, the images out of the bag in interesting ways. For example, you might want to create personal photo streams like Flickr has, so in that case you need to extract all the images from one particular user. Or you might want to extract all the images which have new comments or and so forth. So that's where you can use a views module to easily create queries that extract nodes from the database. So with this little presentation, I hope I was able to show you how we are building technology to enable everyone to create multi-user interactive websites. Are there any questions? Do we have time for questions? How much time do you have? 10 minutes? Oh, lots of questions. Any questions? I can ask some questions.
What about the future directions for Drupal?
So the question was, what about future directions? So the CCK, so Drupal 5.0, which we'll be talking about later, we'll touch upon some of these, I think. But in 5.0, the next version of Drupal, we'll have basic support for custom content types. And in future versions of Drupal, we hope to extend that and make it more feature complete. I would also like to see some of the views module go into core. Maybe not the actual user interface stuff, but as a first step, maybe the query builder, which allows us to clean up some existing code. Something else that I think is going to be really important is internationalization. So at the Drupal conference in Brussels last week, we had several sessions, and like the second most popular session was the one on internationalization. Whereas this is something we never ever talk about on the mailing list, or so it seems. So apparently there is like a little bit of a disconnect between the stuff we talk about on the lists, you know, and the stuff some people really want. And I think the internationalization is going to be one of the most important things we're going to work on in future versions of Drupal as well. What else? So something else we did is we added jQuery to Drupal 5.0, which allows, it's an Ajax library, which allows us to improve our user interfaces. But in general, I think the custom content types, views, a lightweight views maybe, and the internationalization is going to be the three most important short-term issues. And of course, there's always the usability thing and the performance thing. So we're always going to keep working on that. So, but the biggest things are the three items I just mentioned. Anything else we should work on?
It's not me to differentiate.
Anything you feel is missing somehow? No.
Pretty general things.
Like one of the things I'm really interested in as well is image support and being able to upload images and include images in posts. It's something so many people are asking for, but so far we haven't been able to come up with a decent solution. And I think what needs to happen is, on the one hand, we need to work on the file API, so the file system layer in core, which needs to evolve a little bit and needs some cleanup. And then when that is in place, we can actually start working on the image module itself, I think, and maybe move the image module to core and allow people to include images in their posts. Because right now, I mean, it sounds like one of the most important tasks you can do in a content management system, like managing content, like images. But the solutions we have for that are somewhat lacking. So that would be a fourth item on my to-do list. But it's been on the to-do list for a really long time. So we'll see what happens. Any other questions?
Do you plan more sophisticated web marketing tools or modules?
Web marketing tools? What do you mean by web marketing tools? Like support for Google Ads and stuff, or no?
For a company. For the company.
Like to accomplish what? To show banners on your site, or to? No,
to sell my goods.
Ah, so like more like e-commerce stuff.
More and the tracking of visitors.
Okay, I can't really provide you an answer there because the e-commerce module is being maintained by people other than me, and I've actually never used the e-commerce module, so I don't know what the guys are up to But I know it's one of the biggest contributed modules, so you'll have to ask them. And for tracking, we have some basic tracking in core, but nothing super fancy.
More sophisticated statistics.
Yeah. So there's been some talks about this, and there's two camps. On the one hand, you have people who say, well, you shouldn't do tracking because there's specialized tools which take your Apache log files and they do all kinds of fancy stuff. And it's stupid for us to try and, reinvent the wheel. And then on the other hand, there's people who say, well, it would be convenient. Like it would be very easy to use if it were part of Drupal. And so the current situation is that we do a little bit of both. We have some statistics in Drupal, like the very basic stuff, but not things like browser detection or stuff like that. And the tracking we do in core also is in a way specific to Drupal. For example, we can show how much time is spent generating pages, how much time a particular user spends visiting your Drupal website and stuff like that. So the statistics we do have, they tend to provide Drupal-specific information that help you administer your site, like when there is a really aggressive crawler or a Googlebot, for example, you can see that and you can act upon it and block the crawler. But it's probably a different kind of tracking than the one you had in mind. So ask the e-commerce people. Any other questions? I have 3 more minutes.
How is Drupal futures supposed to be sustained?
Okay, so good question. So one of the things we've been talking about and which I've been working on is creating a Drupal association, which is a non-profit organization which can help us grow Drupal. So we're facing a number of difficulties, well, not difficulties, but challenges, maybe you remember the day when the previous hardware went down, and so I put up the server went down, and the people at the hosting company were not responding at all, and so after 2 days of not getting any response, I fired up a page. I changed the DNS records of the domain, and I routed all the people to a different page, and I asked for money because we needed to buy a new machine. It was basically melting, and all of a sudden, in less than 2 days, we had $12,000. And the CTO of Sun sent me an email as well, telling me that he shipped us a machine, which was quite nice. So all of a sudden, we had 4 machines, which were all of them were 2 or 3 times more powerful than the machine we had. And so we've been using these machines for the past year, but because of our growth, some of these machines, like the database server, are slowly getting saturated, and within the next 3 to 6 months, we'll have to buy additional machines or somehow sprinkle some magic dust on the existing hardware to make it faster. So buying, we'll have to scale the infrastructure, and scaling the infrastructure costs money and time. That's one thing. The other thing is there's some books written about Drupal, and some of the publishers try to be very nice to open source projects, and they donate back some of their revenue. So they have a royalty scheme. And so there is one publisher, Pact Publishing, which has some money for us, which we are currently not able to accept easily, because we don't have a legal entity which is capable of accepting money. The other thing is Google Summer of Code. Many of the mentors decided not to accept the money which was Google was providing to them, but to give the money directly back to Drupal. So again, we need an entity which is able to accept money. Organizing conferences. I spent weeks organizing the conference in Brussels. It costed several thousands of dollars. I mean, almost $10,000 to organize, and it was very hard to find sponsors and lots of communication overhead there. So again, a Drupal association would be really helpful to help organize this stuff and would, fix some of the burden of having to bug lots of companies to give us some money. So one of the things, so the Drupal association, if it's incorporated, we're still planning and consulting people about it. If it's going to be incorporated, its task is going to be to accept money and then to spend money and to spend that money to support Drupal and to make sure that Drupal can sustain and grow. And one way to do it is to organize conferences, to buy more hardware and to scale our infrastructure. In some cases, the association might decide to fund some developments which are important for the Drupal infrastructure. For example, the project module, which is used for all issue tracking and support questions. It's probably the most important module for the Drupal website. And so if development is lacking or if we need to fix a problem, we'll be able to throw some money at it if there's no volunteers. Let me see. So yeah, in general, I mean, because Drupal is growing and growing, we're at the point where we need to we need something in place to help this growth and to make sure everything is sustainable. And it's not so much about accepting money and spending money, but it's also about delegating and my responsibilities and making sure I scale, because much of the task the foundation is going to do are things I'm currently doing. But it's getting impossible for me to do it all. Like, we could really use someone whose primary task is the organization of conferences or taking care of the infrastructure and stuff like that. So that's part of the answer to your question.
Thank you.
We ran out of time. So thanks. We'll have a great day.